Hello, everyone, and welcome to day one of Ethical Hacking Recon and the Dark Web. My name is Derek. I'm with O'Reilly Media, and I'll be helping to facilitate the class today. Your instructors for this course are Omar Santos and Joseph Mlodzianowski. Omar is a distinguished engineer at Cisco focusing on artificial intelligence security, cybersecurity research, incident response, and vulnerability disclosure. He's a board member of the OASIS Open Standard Organization and the founder of OpenEOX. Joseph is a 25-year veteran of the cybersecurity field and considered a security aficionado by his peers. He's a traveler and adventurer. He's also a security architect in Cisco's Managed and Intelligence Services. Now, before we get started, I do want to cover a few quick housekeeping items. So first and foremost, both days of this class are being recorded, and you'll receive access to the recordings through your email within 24 to 48 hours of class ending. If you have any questions today or tomorrow, you could submit those right to the Q&A widget. And for general comments, or if you're having technical issues, feel free to reach out in the group chat. If you are subject to regulated status, the chat feature should not be used. The audience may include customers, vendors, or competitors of you or your employer. So if you do choose to take advantage of the interactive features available in this training, please keep in mind that you're responsible for any information you choose to share. All right, well, with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Omar to get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Derek, and thank you everybody for joining here today. I'm very honored to be here with Joseph Mlodzianowski. Hopefully you were able to see my screen. The slides are available for you to download. Of course, you can also download the lab guide, just like I mentioned in the group chat. I'm going to be pasting a lot of resources, not only in the group chat, but of course, they are also available in your slides and in your lab guide. But I'm going to be reminding you of some of those resources in the next few minutes, as we go through the class. Now, the first thing that I would like to cover here today is a disclaimer that is obligatory because of the topic that we're covering here. We're going to be talking about reconnaissance today, mostly around ethical hacking, bug bounties, and so on. And then tomorrow, we're going to shift gears into the dark web. So the information that we're providing here is for educational purposes only. Either myself or Riley or no other entity is absolutely no way responsible for the misuse of this information. This can be used for good. This also can be used for bad. And a lot of attackers and threat actors actually use these type of techniques. And the purpose of this training is, of course, so you learn how malicious attackers are actually doing this, so you can then employ the same methods with permission and defend your organizations and find vulnerabilities before they do. Now, the only prerequisites that we have here is for you to become familiar with basic virtualization technology. You're going to be setting up a VM. It's completely optional, but it is kind of the best way for you to enhance your learning, right? Now, I see a question from JK. As a matter of fact, this is actually a good segue. I'm about to paste a couple of links in here. One of them is actually around the practical cybersecurity fundamentals, which will give you a starting point for this course. Again, you don't have to actually, of course, complete any of those trainings before here. But if you're just getting started with cybersecurity, the CompTIA Pentest Plus, the Security Plus, and then later I'm going to share the Pentest Plus guide, will absolutely help you in there. Joseph was actually one of the authors of the Security Plus book in there as well. But the question from JK is, do any of the repos have viruses in them that will recognize by any of the AVs? And the answer is that the repos will have exploits, not viruses, not malware, but they will have code for exploits and payloads and things like that, that in many cases can be recognized as as a false positive, right, for antivirus, right? So if you are going to clone that repository locally to your PC, I'm not talking about in the VM, because in the VM, of course, you're going to have that in an environment that I created called Websploit, and I'm going to share that with you later. But if you're cloning the repository locally to your system, yes, there may be some antivirus, which is a completely false positive, but they will actually look for, the specific code and payloads, but nothing, absolutely nothing is weaponized in there. The other thing that the repository actually has is a few, and we're going to go into the repository in a second, but I wanted to actually make sure that I address that question. JK, I will share with you a few additional things that are in the repository a few minutes from now. So so JK, the answer is no. There's no malware. There's no virus. The only thing that is code, not binaries or anything else that will execute in your machine. So if you get any antivirus, warnings, it's a complete false positive. All right. So the other prerequisite, of course, you must be familiar with Linux and basic Linux commands and basic networking and basic cybersecurity concepts. Definitely, we're not going to cover here what is a vulnerability, what is an exploit, and so on. All those kinds of concepts you have to be familiarized with. Now, the other thing is that we do have a landing page for the training. It has a link to a repository, but there is a learning environment called Websploit that we will be setting up in a second. But I'm going to go to Websploit in a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the agenda, and then I'm going to also pass it to Joseph to also introduce himself and also to cover the topics for day 2. I will be covering the topics here for today. We're going to start with an introduction to passive reconnaissance, what is open source intelligence, using tools like Recon-ng, Spiderfoot, going over Shodan, gray noise, a few things that you can actually do related to APIs and integrating those tools with one another, especially whenever you're looking at tools like Maltego, the Harvester, and many others that can be integrated with each other, right? And be able to gather public sources of information to do the investigation, right? Then we're gonna shift gears into active reconnaissance. That's whenever we're gonna start doing scanning, support and vulnerability scanning, subdomain enumeration, directory enumeration, and account enumeration as well. So for day 2, I'm going to pass it now to Joseph so he can go over the material that we're covering tomorrow.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Darknet and Dark Web Reconnaissance. Thank you for joining us. As Omar mentioned, we're privileged to have you join us for this class. Tomorrow, we're going to be covering the dark web, the deep web, the surface web. We're going to spend a little bit of time on the deep web and deep web related tools and services to help you better understand that. We're going to compare and contrast what's going on between the dark web and the deep web, where they're often confused. Just about every TV show that you'll ever watch confuses the deep web and the dark web. Weirdly, some hackers I've seen publish material, even some articles, that prominent people publish are wrong about what's the deep web and what's the dark web. So we'll get into that tomorrow. We'll talk about VPNs, proxies, setting up your workstation, whether it's local or a VPS in the cloud, and the best practices on those. And then understanding what you're going to use the machine for, what type of reconnaissance you're going to be doing, whether you're looking for specific materials or if you're doing some hunting. We'll differentiate between the type of machines that you need during that time as well. And then we'll perform some dark web reconnaissance to follow up, and then provide you with, as Omar mentioned, a lot of tools and services and capabilities that you'll be able to use to continue on down the path of learning about recon both on the surface and on the dark web. So thank you, Omar. Back to you.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, appreciate it. All right, so basically, let me go back in time here, or at least in slides, and let's actually introduce this thing called Websploit. Websploit is a learning environment that I created, and let me actually go to websploit.org right now. Hopefully you can see my screen still, but it's a learning environment that I created out of desperation. As a matter of fact, Joseph started a lot of different conferences around the cybersecurity industry for quite some time. He has been, the creator of different villages in DEF CON. DEF CON, if you're not familiar with it, is the biggest hacking conference in the world. He also created the Texas Cyber Summit, among many other, efforts in the industry. So, as a matter of fact, a while back, I don't know, probably 2015 or so, or 2016, he invited me to present in a workshop at the Packet Hacking Village in DEF CON in Las Vegas. And in there, it was actually one of the elements that I was very surprised to see the amount of people that actually want to do hands-on exercises. And of course, I've been doing DEF CON for quite some time, but in that case, whenever you're delivering a full-fledged workshop, and now you have, dozens of students in there, either bringing their own laptop or using a laptop that, we got donated, that are less than optimal in there. And then, of course, DEF CON, since it's the biggest hacking conference in the world, nobody trusts the network. It's a hostile environment and so on. Things are going to get hacked. It was kind of a pain, right? Then the next year, somehow he invited me back. And then I put the stuff in the cloud. I was like, okay, the hell with this. I'm going to put everything in the cloud. And of course, it took an hour, while people then started to host malware in the cloud. And I even got blocked by Google, even though Google actually sponsored me for the cloud. It was Google blocking itself. Kind of chaos, right? So I was like, okay, lesson learned number 50. Let me actually create something that is very portable, that I just give to people to actually install in a VM using the two most popular Linux distributions. And then I put a whole bunch of the exercises in containers, right? So fast forward many years, pretty much like almost 10 years now. And this has grown significantly, right? So what I use this, and Joseph also use it for delivering, of course, this type of training around bug hunting, ethical hacking, incident response, data forensics, threat hunting, even artificial intelligence, using AI for cybersecurity operations nowadays. And the way that you install this thing is really easy. You can install it in the cloud. You can install it locally. Now, if you run a Mac, an ARM-based Mac, you will have to do some creative type of work to convert from x86 to ARM for the containers. And we're working with a few people in the community to actually get those as a conversion in there. But of course, all the predicaments with running VMs in M1, M2s, and M3s. But you can also run these, and I run it all the time in Proxmox or VirtualBox, and again in the cloud. Many organizations and even educational institutions, so universities and everything, they're actually using Websploit now for teaching, right? So again, I just release it to the community, and I keep adding more information there in a regular basis. The things that I updated probably within the next month, and the reason is because I actually added a couple of more resources for a training that I deliver with another colleague. His name is Chris McCoy in the NC State University, literally about 3 weeks ago. And I updated the minimum requirements to 8 gigs of RAM. We were running everything on top of the Cisco modeling labs, and it was actually in the cloud. It's a long story, but we kind of slimmed it down a bit, and it was running in 4 gigs, but I'm like, okay, it's actually pretty easier and more safe to say, hey, if you actually want to run this full-fledged, run multiple tools and everything, have 8 gigs of RAM on that VM, 2 virtual CPUs and 50 gigs of hard drive. Can you run it with 4 gigs of RAM? Yes, absolutely. Can you run all the containers with 4 gigs of RAM? Yes. It will be a little bit strugglish, right? But the reason that I put minimum in there for 8 gigs of RAM is because if you're running a lot of the tools, especially around like Ghidra, and then doing at the same time, different scans with automated tools and so on, of course, it will consume more memory. But once you have the VM installed, like again, you pick either Kali or Parrot. And why Kali or Parrot? Where the first thing is they are the most popular Linux distributions for people that are getting started in cybersecurity and specifically around ethical hacking and bug hunting and so on. The second, and probably more important excuse of why Kali or Parrot is because at the end of the day, they're running Debian behind the scenes, right? So I'm lazy, so I created this command here, or this script, this install script. And if you execute it, basically it will have a lot of apt install, apt update type commands that are specifically for Debian, and it makes it super, super easy to set up this very comprehensive environment. Now, what is setting up is a few tools that do not come with Kali or Parrot that I use for many other trainings, including this one. Second, it is installing Docker and Docker Compose, and it's instantiating a lot of different containers in here. So if you look at these vulnerable applications, each of these bubbles are a different container. A lot of these applications that are on the left, that are beginner to intermediate, they have been created by many people in the industry. WebCode, UShop, and if you scroll down, Utiliday, and so on, those are projects from the Open Web Application Security Project. Actually, they changed their name to Open Worldwide Application Security Project. And I say they, but I'm a lifetime member there. A lot of these things are like capture the flag type scenario. Other ones are very self-guided, right? So many of them are showing you how to exploit vulnerabilities in web applications and APIs and so on. The ones on the right that you see here, and if you keep going all the way down, including these 3, all those I actually personally created. So I created them for many different conferences, like the Texas Cyber Summit that Joseph leads, DEF CON, many other things. And I released this as a capture the flag type of environment. So it's not like super guided. And then typically what I do is I incentivize people and give like little cash to whoever actually gets the exercises the first, right? So whoever solves the VM from knowing absolutely nothing about the application all the way to getting root access, right? So those are absolutely. I saw a brief message that it was only showing the slides, but I think that you should be able to see my screen share. It should be the media player in there, hopefully. All right, so the ones on the right, again, I personally created. For those of you that were asking about, is this safe or not? This is absolutely safe. Again, many organizations, even including us at Cisco, we actually use this for training. We have a week-long Becoming a Hacker training or boot camp that we teach that we actually use this, and we let the employees actually install this VM locally. We also have many organizations, including NC State, UNC, Duke University. I'm based in the Triangle. Today I'm in Spain. That's why probably my audio is not that great. But I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I typically, kind of give back to the community. I teach a few of these things in universities, and then professors actually are now using that. Syracuse University, University of Miami is actually using these. There's many of them. Now actually my friend Petar from Oxford has a couple of professors actually using this environment. So it's completely safe. The cool thing about this is whenever you're going over the active reconnaissance section here in the training, all your scans, all your, kind of attack traffic is contained to the Docker bridge interface that is associated to those, to those containers. Right? So, all right. So I see a couple of questions coming in. Is it open source? Absolutely. This is completely free, completely open source. And as a matter of fact, I'm actually going to be, I'm in Spain for another week and a half or so, but I'm in early April, I'm going to be revamping Websploit with a few additional things that are related to retrieval augmented generation and a few additional tools for AI for some new courses that I'm teaching. And I'm also going to be creating a repo with and enhancing that install script with a repo and so on that has the source code. But it's absolutely 100% free. This is something that I gave to the community. And then again, you can actually use it, modify it, and so on. And then VK asks, can I use it for internal training as well? Absolutely, 100%. You can use it for internal training or external training, and so on. And also give me feedback, right? So if you think that a few things can be improved and so on, please feel free to give me feedback or open a GitHub issue. And talking about the GitHub repository, in your lab guide, in your slides, and in the Websploit.org website, there's a link to the GitHub repository, the famous GitHub repository. The thing that I always, as a dad joke, always make, very lame joke, that I always say, if you don't get anything out of this training, I can guarantee you that you will get something out of this GitHub repository. I personally use this GitHub repository for my own benefit to put references around not only ethical hacking and bug bounties and data forensics, incident response, but also artificial intelligence security, especially since information is changing so fast nowadays, right? So even if you go to the AI research section here, right, I have things around machine learning fundamentals, AI risk management, ethics and privacy, model security testing, monitoring of AI, and especially AI monitoring tools for models and also for implementations in the enterprise, like a retrieval augmented generation, prompt engineering, and also prompt injection. Tons and tons of examples of prompt injection attacks that you can actually do, right? So a lot of these are absolutely, super valuable. So that's why I always say that if you don't get anything out of this class, you can absolutely get something from the GitHub repository. Another thing is we are creating a lot of GPTs nowadays. Like everybody can create a GPT pretty easily. And I'm one of the contributors to this repository, but it's called Awesome GPT Agents. A lot of them are related to open source intelligence, to look information about how you can use GPT to enhance your reconnaissance aspect, even for the defensive side of security, not only for the offensive side of security, right? So feel free to absolutely use this and abuse it, and of course, contribute to it as well, right? So we will definitely become familiar with that GitHub repository throughout the class because you're gonna use it a lot, right? Now, the link is also in the slides. As I mentioned to you, a lot of this is gonna be led by demonstration. This is an extensive hands-on class. The reason that I'm actually doing a little bit of the introduction here is so you can actually start setting up Websploit, so you can do the exercises here for today and tomorrow. Joseph is actually going to have yet another more comprehensive lab guide that will actually walk you through a lot of things in the dark web, right? All right, so I see a couple of questions coming in. Actually, one more from MP. Do we have AI hacking challenges in Websploit? We do, not for this class. And actually, I'm adding a couple of more, again, in about 2 weeks or so, for both, prompt injection, even showing you some code. There's a few of them in there in the repository, not in Websploit. Well, I guess it's in Websploit because Websploit has a clone of the GitHub repository. So in other words, once you install Websploit, you will have the GitHub repository under the root hacker. The name of the directory is called root hacker, right? So the root directory hacker, and you're going to be going over this in the next few minutes. But yeah, we'll definitely gonna add a whole bunch more. There's 3 additional classes that I'm actually teaching here related to AI security. All right, so the lab guide. The lab guide is the core of the training, and I think that I closed it. Give me 1 second here. There we go. So if you open the lab guide, it should look something like this. And again, you're gonna be getting one today. You're gonna getting another lab guide tomorrow. The introduction here that I did is around the lab setup is also documented in your lab guide. So if I went too fast or with my accent you got lost, absolutely you can actually retrieve that information again in your lab guide. If you click on there, it has the command, where to get it, the information about Websploit and so on. Once you install Websploit, and I think that a few of you may have already installed it because this was part of the course registration page and the course setup was there. If you already have Websploit installed, you can keep going. If you have just Kali or if you have Parrot, you already have Recon-ng, which is the first exercise in here, and you can get started with that one. But again, I'm going a little bit slow here now, and we're gonna pick up the pace. We're gonna give you breaks to actually do the exercises, but with the purpose of you to actually at least run the script. But again, if you already have Kali or Parrot, if you have it in the cloud and so on, you can absolutely you use that for the exercises, and at the same time you just run the script. If you already have a VM with Kali, you just clone it, make a new one, and then run the script, and it will set up the environment. Another question that I get all the time around Websploit and these environments and these labs is that can I leave Websploit running right there? How do I know that Websploit is running? That's the first thing. Well, Websploit is not a thing that is just running. It's a lot of resources, right? Think about that you have Kali or Parrot with all the tools that come with it, but then I put more tools into it, and then I put these exercises and the resources and the repositories, and there's a few more other than mine that also got cloned. Like there's a payloads, all the things repository, there's a seclist repository that you're gonna be learning in the lab guide later in the course. And in my repository, I actually have exercises around reverse engineering binaries from an IoT device. I have a couple of exercises in there. I have crypto challenges, again, the AI stuff that you saw in there, and so on. Excuse me. Give me 1 second. I don't want to cough in your ear and get some water. Sorry about that. All right. So yeah. So think about it like that. What you can do to see if the containers on Websploits are running is to use a command called containers. And we're going to go over that later once in the second half of the training. That's whenever you start doing the active reconnaissance and so on, right? All right. The other thing that I would like to highlight in here, let me go back to the slides real quick, is that in reconnaissance, you always gonna be doing reconnaissance as a first step of a cyber attack. Yes, attackers actually do reconnaissance, open source intelligence, and active reconnaissance for understanding and gathering information about the target in order for them to be successful, in order for them to be doing different attacks against a target. However, the passive reconnaissance of the concept of open source intelligence, this is whenever you are gathering information from public sources on the internet, things like DNS records, public records, social media, websites, what people put in LinkedIn, company websites, information about company acquisitions, Shodan, who is information, and many others, right? In passive reconnaissance, or the concept of open source intelligence, is not only used for ethical hacking, but also law enforcement uses these. Private investigators use this information as well. So as a matter of fact, talking about private investigators, let me paste in here. There we go. So in the group chat, I'm going to paste a link to it was a conference that we actually did in here called the Red Team and Bug Bounty Conference. And basically, I had a few colleagues of Joseph and myself. The first one was Jason Haddix. He's actually very popular in the cybersecurity industry, doing a lot of bug bounties. He used to be the CISO of Ubisoft, then now he owns his own training company and so on. He actually was kind enough to actually present a very, very fast-paced recon introduction, and a lot of resources actually he uses whenever he does reconnaissance for bug bounties, right? Then after that, Jeff Foley, which is the creator of OWASP. OWASP is a very popular open source intelligence tool, and now people use it for also attack surface management, basically to know how you look from an external perspective in your company, right? It's a very, very successful OWASP project. He's actually was going over the new elements of OWASP in there, and this is pretty recent, right? And then the last one is also a good friend of Joseph and myself. Her name is Sandra, and she is an investigator, and she investigates a lot of corporate espionage, and she has a pretty cool career, right? And she was going over, what the tools that she uses and so on. But again, all that is related to open source intelligence. So, but what is this open source intelligence? Again, it is public information. It is information about victims, about targets that may be available in online databases and repositories and registrations of domains, and you're not sending packets like a scanner to a target, right? So you're not doing active reconnaissance. You're actually passively, without people knowing, gathering all this information. And I see the question around VK, VirtualBox, and VMware. My preference, in my case, in my home, whenever I run this type of thing, I just use an old PC running Proxmox. It beats VMware and VirtualBox by far because it's free, even though VirtualBox is free. And the reason for that is because I can repurpose some hardware. Super cool to do a training lab and so on. As a matter of fact, let me actually send you this. Let me do a quick searching here. Building lab. There we go. In the group chat, we published this right before the holidays. And this is a video on demand, and we also do a live training on how to build a lab, and it goes over Proxmox and VirtualBox and VMware and even OpenStack and so on. It goes all over Ansible and so on. So I'll paste in the group chat there, VK, for you for the site. But again, that's my opinion. This is like purses for women, and no offense to the women here. It is a personal preference, right? I do use VirtualBox in other environments. I'm using a Mac M2 right now. I'm actually traveling again. I'm in Spain. I'm actually on PTO today, but whenever I'm at home, I basically have a cluster of Proxmox, and I use that for there. So thank you, VK, for the question. All right, so reconnaissance is actually part of the day in the life of an attack in the MITRE ATT&CK framework. If you're not familiar with MITRE ATT&CK, it's actually one of the best resources that MITRE has actually put together. There's another set of resources that is called Atlas for artificial intelligence. We have the time, I'll share that with you later. But attack is basically the set of tactics and techniques that real world attackers actually use for malfeasance, for doing different types of attacks. And in this case, as you see in here, we have reconnaissance as a first step, and that's actually including passive and active reconnaissance. They call it like active scanning, scanning IP blocks, vulnerability scanning, gathering victim host information. That's in the active reconnaissance. And then you also have, of course, open source intelligence and gathering information from DNS and so on. So if you're not familiar with the MITRE ATT&CK framework, I strongly recommend for you to become familiar with it. If you're getting started in cybersecurity, that is crucial, both in the offensive and the defensive side of cybersecurity. It is used a lot for threat hunting and to automate a lot of the threat hunting capabilities using tools like Caldera and many other ones out there. So the link is in your slides. And of course, I have a whole bunch of additional information in your lab guide. So the next slide in here is going over this website called Exploit Database. Now, this website, the main purpose, just like the name says, is a database of exploits that anybody in the community can contribute to. However, it also has a section called the Google Hacking Database, and it's basically a collection of Google dorks, in other words, search strings that you can use to gather information using Google, and as a matter of fact, you can actually use other information or other search engines as well, right? So if you click on that link in the middle of your screen, it will actually take you to, open in a different window, give me 1 second. It will take you to this page. All right. So let me make this a little bit bigger. And since I'm in Europe, popping up all the cookies things in here for GDPR. There we go. So again, you're in the exploit database, but you're in the second section under GHDB. That's Google Hacking Database. And in here, you see a lot of text, a lot of dorks. And again, dorks is a terminology for search strings. So if I actually go over and click on any of these and open them in new windows or new tabs, you see that it says Google search. And then if you click on that, it will take you to Google and it will put the search string in the browser, right? If I go back to the main page and I type something like passwords, you see that automatically starts filtering down to, of course, different search strings that are specific to websites, that are specific to different applications. Like in this case, like description site gov.india, file type XLX, and passwords. These are files that may contain passwords of people. If I click on that and I open it, actually got commented out. This one, give me 1 second, my second monitor here. I'm actually using Hotel TV as my second monitor, and the aspect ratio is horrible here. My apologies. What I'm gonna do, that one didn't work because it got, like that, it got mangled. But I'm gonna go back to Google and then just paste the actual thing here. There you go. So site gov, file type XLX, password, and you actually see. Now you will get, I can guarantee you, right? The reason that they actually put this in here is because probably they have found a lot of information with, real people's passwords, vulnerable websites, and, a lot of sensitive information that should have never been picked up. So the big disclaimer is that if you actually go to any of these sites and you click on them, you do not have permission to use those type of resources, right? It is a very fragile world. As a matter of fact, if you click on file containing passwords, you see a lot. I'm talking about dozens, 171 entries, just to be on, to be exact of different types of search strings or Google Dorks that you can use to find passwords out there. Some of them are false positive. There are things like sample documentation and honeypot and so on. But many of them are real people's passwords, whether somebody intentionally or unintentionally actually put it, somewhere or expose it in the web. You can absolutely find people's passwords in there. So again, just because you just found your ex-girlfriend's password, you have the permission to actually use it and abuse it, right? So that's big disclaimers that I have to actually give in here. But that's the Google Hacking Database. You can actually explore that. We're going to be going over different tools that you can perform a lot of these Google Dorks and experimentation or exploration rather in an automated fashion using different tools as well, right? Now, I do have sections in my GitHub repository that are related to OSINT and Reconnaissance, but if I go over the one around Reconnaissance, again, I'm just clicking on the link in your slide, but also you can just navigate to the OSINT section here. I have a lot of information about different passive reconnaissance tools. You see the links to all of them here. I mentioned OWASP, one of the most popular out there, Recon-ng, which is exercise 1. Then I'm gonna give you a break to complete the setup of Websploit and also to do the first exercise. And then tons of additional highlights of websites for Google hacking or website exploration. Of course, Google Hacking Database is there too, but many other as well. Data breach query tools, IP address and DNS lookups, acquisition information about companies and so on. And if that wasn't enough, we have a section here called Dark Web OSINT Tools. Tomorrow, Joseph is actually going to go over a lot of these tools in a lot of details, right? You're going to be learning about how to use a few things in here as far as reconnaissance and search engine tools and so on. And even though the dark web, the main intent is actually for not to be indexed and for search engines to pick it up, but there are some creative ways that you can do to find information in the dark web, and that's what Joseph is actually going to concentrate here tomorrow. It's a really, really, really good section. Tomorrow, I will say probably a lot more interesting than the one here today. So definitely look forward to looking at that. However, going back to the repository here, if you look at this section called the OSINT framework, and if you click on that, it will take you to this very beautiful visualization. But other than a visualization, it is a very, very cool resource that goes over many different sources of information, from business records to company profiles and general news about a company, annual reports, and so on. But also can go over things like public records, and especially if you are in the US, there's a lot of public data about you, right? And I'm more familiar with the US ones, but there's the same thing from Germany, as you've seen here, and many others. If you own a house in the US, most likely, there's 99.9% probability that your county has a public entry of the house that you bought, how much you pay for the house, how much taxes you pay for the house, how much it is value now, and how much you pay, 10 years ago, and now whether it has increased or decreased in value, right? All that information is being used by scammers to actually target you on a daily basis, right? You combine that with many, 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 many different sources of information to actually get your phone number. Even if you don't put information in the web, most definitely either your mom, your dad, your cousin, your friend, your wife, your husband is actually tagging you or putting information out there for you, right? So a lot of these resources can be used to target not only a company or an organization, but also an individual, right? So all that is in my GitHub repository. All right, so the other thing, I just saw a question here. Tomorrow builds on today's course. Is it necessary to understand the surface OSINT recon techniques that Omar is covering today? Yes. Oh, actually, that's Joseph's comment. So I thought that was a question, sorry. But yes, what Joseph mentioned in here, it actually builds in today's course. I was like, man, that student actually knows a lot about tomorrow's agenda. But it was Joseph. So thank you, Joseph, in there. So again, a lot of these tools are also in your slides. Want to be very brief in here. I do have some references to tools like Hunchly, H-Indexed, Store66, but Joseph is actually going to cover all that here tomorrow. The only thing that I'm going to do here now, before I give you guys a break, I'm going to give you a 15-minute break to do a bio break, plus to continue to set up or finish setting up your environment and complete exercise 1. The only thing that I'm going to cover is the introduction of what is Tor, right? You're going to be using Tor tomorrow a lot. And a lot of people think that it's a malicious tool, that because attackers are actually using it, it has to be a bad tool that you should not use. So the short answer is no. The longer answer is that it's a technology that was originally created by the US government. And it is a subjective, whether you think that is a good thing or bad thing, right? But they actually invented this technology. It was created by the Navy. And the goal was to create this onion routing infrastructure where you can route traffic through the internet and maintain privacy and anonymity as much as possible while you're actually encrypting the traffic and going through multiple servers each step in the way, right? Now, you can go to torproject.org. Again, tomorrow you're going to be setting it up. You're going to be actually going over also the Tor service. And how it works is that, let's say I want to go to O'Reilly.com, just like in my screen here. You launch your Tor browser or a service. You can run it in the CLI, in Linux, Parrot and Kali and so on. And then let's say your location is London, and O'Reilly.com, of course, is using CDN, so it's all over the world. But if I'm collecting logs from O'Reilly.com, in this case, if I'm being routed through different entry nodes, relays, so in this case, the first one is in the US, the middle ones, can be all over the place, and the last one in my example here is in Russia. If I'm collecting those logs in O'Reilly.com, I'm seeing that transaction came from Russia, not from the UK. And that's why attackers also use this information, right? And that's why also attribution in some cases is really hard. Nowadays, it's not a taboo that, nation states are actually using this like on a not only a daily basis per second, right? I mean, the automated, now with AI, a lot of automated things that are actually happening right now. But absolutely, it's actually something that is a dual use of technology, right? So it's something that attackers actually use as well, right? Now, RJ has a question. Is there any discussions regarding data removal from the dark web and dark web? Actually, I see that Joseph just answered that question, and thank you so much, Joseph. And it's already in the group chat, so thank you. All right, so let me do this. I'm gonna highlight a few Tor-related projects, and then I'm gonna give you guys a break. I've been advertising that for quite some time. So there's a Onion or Onion. It's a web-based protocol to learn about, the relays and bridges that you can actually use. And they have an API. They have RESTful web service, and you can get information in their metrics page in the Tor project. Another one is an app that you can download, and there are many of them. This is just one, but there are many apps in there. One is called Arbot, and it's a proxy app that you can install in mostly Android devices. Then Shadow is a network simulator and emulator for Tor, even for Bitcoin simulation. People use it. Stem is a Python control library for Tor. TorBirdie is basically an extension to Thunderbird, so you configure that to send and receive your emails over the Tor network. And then Text or Con, or Textor Con, is an implementation of a protocol, a control protocol called the Twisted Network Library, right? And it also supports, Python and so on. And then, of course, the Tor site has a whole bunch of metrics and so on. So let's stop for now. I'm gonna unshare my screen and push this timer. There we go. Actually, before I do that, let me see if I can stop it real quick. I just saw 2 questions in the Q&A panel. So certification, is there a difference between CH and Open or CPent or Pentest Plus? There's a huge difference. CH is basically an introduction of cybersecurity class, right? So even though it has ethical hacking, it actually goes into a very high-level introduction into all the domains in cybersecurity. A lot of people actually use it whenever they're getting started, right? Either you select CEH or you go to Pentest Plus in the case of CompTIA, and sorry, not Pentest Plus, Security Plus, and so on. So after you got the security fundamentals, if you want to go more into ethical hacking, then if you're looking for intermediate certification, you either take Pentest Plus, a little bit easier to attain. It's multiple choice exam, but they also have performance-based questions. And it goes over the whole life cycle of a pen test or a bug bounty, from pre-engagement interactions, like whenever you're doing your pre-engagement statement of work, rules of engagement documents, the scoping activities, your NDAs, your disclaimers, etc., all the way to providing a report and best practices in the reports and so on. They also include, Pentest Plus include a lot of the programming that is actually needed for ethical hacking. Pretty high level, but things like JavaScript and Python and PowerShell and scripting languages like Bash and PowerShell and so on. So that's a big significant difference between CH and so on. Now CH has also a practical exam that is a lab, right? Now a lot of people after like Pentest Plus, they go to OSCP, but there are many others, right? I mean, there's so many certifications nowadays in there, but hopefully that makes sense. And then the last one is from SM. Sorry I joined late. How do I see the exercise number 1? That is in your lab guide. Again, your lab guide can be downloaded from the resource icon. And that's what we're gonna be taking a break right now to complete exercise 1. It will be more than 15 minutes. I cannot sugarcoat it. Hopefully, these 54 minutes that I've been talking allow you to install Websploit, or at least have a copy of Kali or Parrot running, that then you can actually start using some of these tools like, Recon-ng. But the Recon-ng exercise is many, many pages. I think it's like more than 20 pages. And it will probably take you around that, like 20, 25 minutes or so. But it's okay. We're going to give you 15 minutes. Whenever I come back, I am going to go over and then explain through the lab guide, each step by step on, what the lab guide is actually asking you about. The lab guide is yours. You can actually complete it at any time. You can use it as homework, right? You don't have to, like, nobody's putting a gun in your face. That's a slang from the US. But nobody, is dictating that you have to complete, these in X amount of minutes and so on. Take it easy, enjoy the course and then go through it. You have access to Websploit and the lab guide forever. The recording of this training, just like any other training in O'Reilly, you're going to be getting it within 24 hours. You can pause it, you can go back, and then I'm going to give you a lot of additional reference to additional on-demand exercises and trainings that we actually have in here later in the course. So let's actually push that 15-minute timer. You should be seeing it in the front of your screen right now. Again, feel free to stretch, get a cup of coffee, glass of water, and complete the exercises. I'll talk to you then. All right, the timer is over. So hopefully you had a good break. You were able to install Websploit and complete exercise 1. Let me actually share my screen again. Let me actually go over what exercise 1 was asking you to do. So give me 1 second here so I can find the lab guide. There you go. You should be able to see my screen. Perfect. All right, so Recon-ng is a tool that was actually created by a gentleman. His name is Tim Toms. He works for a company in the US called Black Hills Information Security. It's a pretty popular kind of boutique cybersecurity a company that they do a lot of different services, including like pen testing, ethical hacking, etc. Right? So what they again, created this, it's an environment that you can interact with a lot of different modules, other tools, other resources. And the main purpose of Recon-ng is, right? But let me start by saying this. Hacking is not about tools. It is about the methodology. It's about thinking like an attacker. And again, the methodology is the number one thing that you're actually going to develop with experience, and the tools will come and go, and technology will come and go, but your methodology will actually, retain. So why am I starting with Recon-ng? Well, it's because I have to start with one tool, right? I mean, and so on. Can you do the same thing with other tools? Yes, you can do many different things with other tools, and I'm going to share with you how that actually works. But one of the things that actually Recon-ng allows you to do is to be able not only to interact with different resources, but also to maintain the track of all the information you're gathering in different workspaces. So basically, a workspace, let me see, I think that I have here, I don't, but if you go to Recon-ng and just type workspaces, you can create, you can delete workspaces and so on. And depending on the reconnaissance you want to do, you can name the workspace, let's say, I don't know, about a specific target. Let's say I'm doing a reconnaissance against Cisco or against Tesla or against NVIDIA, right? Then I can name it like that, and then it will create a SQL-like database in the same directory that you actually launch Recon-ng. But in this case, what you're seeing here is that, of course, you have many different resources. They call them modules that you can actually interact. You have to install those modules. The way that you actually go over to the marketplace is by actually just typing, let me make this bigger, marketplace search, right? And you see all these modules. If you see a D on the top, like right here, that means that it needs some type of dependency. If you see a K or a star by the K, that means that you need an API key in order for you to use that resource. So for Bing, in this case, you need an API key. You don't need any dependencies. But if you keep going down below, you see some related to Shodan, and we're going to go over what is Shodan in a second, and so on. That will make a little bit more sense later. But in Shodan, you actually need something, some dependency, and in that case, it's actually the Python API client, and by default, it is installed in Websploit, and it is also installed in Kali and Parrot. But you need an API key, right? We're not going to be using any of the modules that have dependencies or that require an API key in the training here today. We are not going to do that. We're going to be using a few of them that are, of course, built in, right? So the way that you can do additional searches is, of course, to use keywords, right? So you can do marketplace search whois, and you're gonna get the titles, or it's gonna match on the names of the specific module, right? Now, if you do DNS, for example, like down below here, those are only showing you the things that actually match the name of DNS, but there are other DNS type module. In this case, we started with Netcraft. Now, I'll demonstrate how tools can, in some cases, work, and in other cases, don't work, right? So Netcraft, in some cases, it looks like I'm breaking up a little bit. My apologies, it's the unfortunate part about it. But I'm traveling today and I'm in the mercy of a hotel. So hopefully it's a little bit better now, but I'll try to speak slowly and so on. And as a matter of fact, what I'm going to do, since we're gonna be actually doing a lot more exercises, I'm gonna give you guys more breaks to do those exercises a little bit later. But and we're not gonna take separate breaks from the exercises and bio breaks. They're all gonna be combined, right? So plan your thing initially. Now, JE says the lab guide after step 11, the back command is not mentioned anymore, all the way to step 22. However, it implies switching to the other modules. Yes. We're going to go into that in a second. We'll definitely go into that in a second. But to conclude here with Netcraft, again, don't depend on a specific module or a specific tool. Tools will break, modules will break. As an ethical hacker, the effectiveness of your efforts are not merely on the tools at their disposal, but on the methodology and the approach. In your case, probably Netcraft did not work, right? So if I keep going down below and I search for Netcraft and I install Netcraft in here, right? Marketplace installed, Recon domains host Netcraft as a command to actually install it. After you do that, you can do an info. So type the info command, and as a matter of fact, let me actually do annotations real quick. Pro, there we go. And all right, so give me 1 second. There we go. So here, info, that is a command to actually see the required values for the specific module. So you're in the Netcraft module. The different options are shown here below. The source is the only option that you can set for these specific modules. Different modules will have different options. This is very similar to other tools like Metasploit. If you're familiar with Metasploit, you're familiar with this type of menu-based items, right? But in this case, it's a little bit confusing. This is not the source of the packet. Rather, is the source of input. So if you look in here, the source of input basically is the domain that you're actually going to be using for doing your reconnaissance, right? We have options, set source, and I use that has many different subdomains. And you saw that the tool was actually able to pick up bootcamp.hacker.org. So we're doing subdomain enumeration using DNS records that are hosted in Netcraft. However, in many cases, this will not work, right? It will time out and so on. Why did I leave it there? Well, for that purpose. That's the reason that I put there. Now, the step number 7, that's actually what JE was actually mentioning. Step number 7, that says type the word back to go back into the main menu. To navigate through Recon-ng, you have to type back, right? So it's a given that after that, I'm not going to be repetitive and say, hey, go back and everything. But to navigate to the main page, you have to type the word back, right, to the main menu. And then in the second instance of your lab, I installed the Bing search, basically just looking at information that I can gather from Bing instead of Google Hacking Database, like I was actually mentioning earlier. In this case, it's actually from Bing. So if I actually type info, you see that we also have the source as the only option. So again, same command, options, search source, hacker.org, or whatever domain you actually want to do. If you want to do any domains, you're not hacking anybody. That's the other thing that I want to highlight here. You're using open source intelligence, public information to gather, different insights about a specific target. You can do this against, Cisco.com, your own company, Tesla.com, NVIDIA, Intel, Microsoft, anybody, your personal website, and so on, right? And then here, basically, I type run, just like I did with Netcraft, and you see that I'm finding more information. So I'm just finding webapps.hacker.org, bootcamp.hacker.org, and so on. Now, you also can use what we call brute forcing using DNS. You're not brute forcing a password, just a module is actually called brute host, but it's basically using a word list. And a word list, you see here, is a combination of words. It's basically a file that has many, many, many different words that can be used for many, many different purposes. One of them is for, in this case, subdomain enumeration. Another way that you can use word lists is to enumerate different files and directories in a web application or in a system. Another use case is to crack passwords, right? And guess passwords, with tools like Hashcat and John the Ripper and so on. But in this case, we're going to be using word lists for doing DNS enumeration. So if I keep going in here in the lab guide, you see that I loaded the Recon domains host, root host, and in this case, of course, you actually have to install it first, it's given. And then you see that I highlighted the word list that is built in. Now, within your Websploit environment, there are many other word lists that you can use. There's a directory called seclist under root that is a clone of another GitHub repository that has dozens of other word lists. And then Kali and Parrot come with dozens of other word lists and so on. So, but to keep it simple, I'm leaving the built-in hostnames.txt word list that you're seeing in the screen. Then after that, I set the source to, again, the domain that we're trying to enumerate, which is hacker.org. And then if you keep going, you actually see that there's a whole bunch of new domains or subdomains found, 32 to be specific in there. Now you have 36 different domains that are total in your environment. You can do a show host, right? Or you can also do a dashboard command. The dashboard command will actually tell you the results summary and so on. And if you keep going, you see the show host in here, right? Now, I want to actually draw your attention to another thing in here, right? Other than everything else is actually step-by-step in your lab guide. But what I want to share is something that I created. And this is a perfect example of using different tools. And in this case, nowadays with ChatGPT and AI, and I'm going to paste the link to my personal blogging here, but I'm going to scroll down to one called Search Spy, right? And I'll paste the direct link in here, but I'm going to explain the concept first about certificate transparency, and then I'm going to go over the actual tool itself, right? So certificate transparency is basically a really good thing. It is not a bad environment. However, the dual nature of technology applies here. Attackers can use this information to gather insights about different hosts and systems within an infrastructure. So, but what is certificate transparency? Basically, it is an open framework that was created after DigiCert and DigiNotar, which are very popular certificate authority services, they got hacked back in 2011. So after they got hacked, and there were malicious certificates being issued, by malicious certificate authority servers, then this concept of certificate transparency was created to improve the security of TLS certificates by creating an auditable log of all the certificates that were issued by these CAs or certificate authorities, right? And it will allow you to actually detect if either by mistake or maliciously somebody actually uses or issue a certificate, right? Now, in the context of Reconnaissance, then you can use these logs from many public websites like crt.sh and so on, and then gather a lot of information about the target, right? And in this case, what I did is I created a very, very basic Python implementation of interacting with crt.sh, specifically the API, and you can install it really easy using pip install search spy, just like you've seen in the screen. Let me make this a little bit bigger. One the other way. There we go. And then you can actually just do Python 3 search spy, do the help menu. You can actually see it in there. And just like you see in the demonstration here, I'm launching this against secretcorp.org, which is a website that I own. And then it gives you a lot of information about that, that domain, right? And it brings the output in JSON format. You get a lot of information about internal hosts of any organization and so on, because it's looking at the certificates that were issued and the auditable log that I mentioned to you earlier. So this reconnaissance element is not only super useful for finding hosts that are exposed to the internet, but also internal hosts that are critical systems. You will find things like internal dev environments or development environments, staging environments, and many critical resources and so on. In another training, I teach you how to use retrieval augmented generation using AI, using these tools. As a matter of fact, that was one of the main purposes that I created this search by utilities, because I'm creating a bigger kind of ecosystem of tools to help you do reconnaissance using AI, and then go through all this massive information that you're getting back from certificates and from many different things, and then be able to not only accelerate the process of reconnaissance, but really take it to the next level, right? I am going to be teaching or presenting the first demo of this in the conference coming up in April, actually in a few weeks, in Florida, in the Kennedy Space Station. It's called Hack SpaceCon. And then after that, I'm going to expand it a little bit more after I release the tool over there. And then I'm going to, create as part of the training that we're creating here in O'Reilly that will be available in June. So keep track of that. But again, all this, and I'm going to post more information in this personal blog that I have. And again, it's kind of like, I like to write, as you can see. I've written 26 books, and it's kind of a stress reliever for me, to be honest, right? But I put random things, from the future of AI-generated content, quality of synthetic data issues, to line chain resources, and tons of resources around retrieval augmented generation, and definitely frameworks and orchestration libraries like line chain and so on. So I'm definitely, keep looking into the blog. And again, it's public information, free, you don't have to pay anything, and so on. All right, so let me do this. I am going to, give me 1 second here. Let me refresh my screen, or at least there's a question coming in from VN in the Q&A. And then I'm going to give you guys a break for completing a few more exercises. I'm just looking at the training here, or the training, the time, and it's 30 minutes past the hour. And some of these exercises will actually take a little bit more than that. But the question from VM is coming. I have a very basic, simple question: how to protect mobile phones from hacking, identify malicious links, and malware even before entering. The number one thing protecting phones: don't jailbreak them. Right? I know that many people don't do that. I should not say that. A lot of people still jailbreak them, or they actually, root them, especially in the Android family of phones, to get free stuff in there. Once you do that, it actually removes a lot of the security implications, or the security features rather, that can lead into many negative implications, right? Whenever you do that, like from secure boot to image signing, a lot of things, right? ASLR and so on. The other thing is, both Android and iPhone, and I know that this is actually part of Reconnaissance class, not that, but I want to be respectful. Just a couple of minutes, for that question while you do the exercises, right? So just keep going doing the exercise. But for VN, number one thing is that though both of those main operating systems, Android and Apple iOS, they do have a lot of protections in place. That's why their bug bounties are so expensive. Like if you find a remote execution, you can get up to $1 million in some of them. And it's because they do have, a lot of really good sandboxing implementations, runtime defenses, ASLR, secure boot, etc. The challenge is the apps and what you trust of giving access to your apps and so on. So the number one thing is, just both Android and iOS always are popping up messages. Do you want this ad to allow you, content, from, your photos, your files, etc. A lot of people are just click allow, and then never do an audit back, and that's one of the problems. And a lot of people actually, download random apps, out there. But thank you for the question, BN. I want to be also respectful for everybody else's time, even though we're going in a break. I'm going to push that button right now for the break timer. Again, let's actually do exercise 2, exercise 3, and exercise 4. Actually, for exercise 3, take it back. Exercise 2 is Spiderfoot. That will take you a significant amount of time. You will run that tool, let it running, and just keep going into exercise 3. And it's optional, right? So if you click on the all, like scan all, it will probably take you like 3 hours. I'm not exaggerating, right? Even with a good internet connectivity, depending on the target. Right? So that's in there. So exercise 2, 3, and 4. Let's actually combine that. Once we come back, exercise 4 is optional. It's morely informational. A lot of people actually don't like to use Maltego because of the require for you to register. But I'm going to go over what is Maltego, how powerful that is, and so on after the break. So I'll talk to you in 14 minutes from now. You see the timer in the front of the screen. Also, feel free to use this as a normal break. Feel free to stretch, get a cup of coffee, a glass of water, and so on. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, hopefully you can hear me now. The timer is over. I know that it went pretty quick. However, let me actually do this. Let me share my screen. While I am sharing the screen, I am also going to be pasting a few resources to the group chat, because I recognize that this will actually be, pretty fast pacing here, even though we have 2 days, but we have a lot of materials, a lot of, different exercises and so on. And I want to be respectful for everybody, to be able to obtain this information and even see the demos and so on. Although I see a question that just came in from EL in the group chat. What will be the VirtualBox networking mode to connect to multiple hosts with NAT but not visible to public? What would be the VirtualBox networking mode to connect to multiple hosts with NAT but not visible public? Host only network is whenever you have, I assume multiple hosts is meaning multiple VMs, other VMs that you have in there. You do not need that for this training. Everything is contained through Websploit. So you only need one network type, and that will be NAT, right? Just so you can connect to the internet. All the other, containers, etc., they're running on Docker. There's all the other vulnerable applications and so on. So multiple VMs will be host only network. That's the terminology from VirtualBox. All right, excuse me. So going back to what I was saying before, there's a whole bunch of Reconnaissance demos that are, related to the exercises you have in your lab guide. The first one that I pasted in the group chat is Recon demos on an on-demand CEH training for those of you that actually are preparing for that certification. The second one is additional demos related to Shodan, Maltego, which is the tool that I'm going to cover real quick in here, OWASP, and of course Recon-ng and several other ones. And that is actually part of the practical cybersecurity course. And then we also have a cybersecurity bootcamp that is 26 hours long. But the section that I have in there is the specific to passive reconnaissance, and I just pasted in the group chat. So again, there should be 3 links now after the question from EL. One is the demos in the CH training. The other one is the demos for Shodan, Maltego, OWASP, and Recon-ng. And the other one is, of course, a more comprehensive 26-hour bootcamp that we all have here in O'Reilly. So that's a cool thing about O'Reilly. With your subscription, it's completely free, again, with your subscription. All right, so let me go back and explain the exercises that hopefully you started, because I guarantee you cannot complete, with the time that we allotted you. Tool called Spiderfoot, again, one out of many other tools that you can use. It is a Python-based tool. You can install the requirements by using pip3 install, and then reading the requirements file. Before that, of course, you actually have to clone the repository that you see in there. And basically, once you launch the tool with the Python command that you're seeing in the screen here, it will start a web service on port 5001. Then you use your browser to access that port. So in my case, locally to 127.0.0.1, port 5001. Now, there's many different ways that you can perform this quote-unquote scan. It's actually going to scan for public information about a target. Now, if you select all, which is the one that you're seeing in the screen here in your lab guide, that will actually also do a little bit of active reconnaissance. It will interact with whatever domain or website and so on in there. However, the seed target, which is a domain name or an IP address, right, or a subdomain, if you want to actually be specific to a subdomain, you can do that. But let's say you want to put this against, I don't know, your personal website, hacker.org or Tesla or, On24 and so on. Just be aware that if you select all, it will actually, will do a little bit of active reconnaissance. If you do footprint or just passive, that is actually a lot just using public information, right? So I have all these step-by-step in your lab guide. You don't need me for that, right? Sublister is another tool, another GitHub repository, another Python tool that you can install the requirements. Everything, again, is actually very well documented in your lab guide, and it's self-explanatory. It's yet another tool that you can also interact with many other sources of information, like Baidu and Google and Bing and Netcraft. Remember Netcraft from Recon-ng? DNS information, passive DNS, not only from Recon-ng and DNS Dumpster, VirusTotal, and so on. Some of these will require an API key, right? So by default, what I'm doing here is actually I'm just doing a reconnaissance to hacker.org. So that's the domain. It's a verbose, so -v. Let me see if I can highlight it here. So -v in the command here is for verbose, -d is for domain name, B for all the different sources of information, or you can specify one if you only want to use, let's say, DNS Dumpster or Google or Yahoo and so on. And then the port, and then of course the port 80 and 443, but you can actually specify whatever is appropriate for whatever reconnaissance you're trying to do. All right, so Maltego. What is Maltego? Let me actually go to this page real quick. Let me highlight it here. And I am going to be brief because we have a lot of additional, they have a little video, what is Maltego? You don't need me for that, but it's a very, very, very popular, super popular tool for active reconnaissance or passive reconnaissance and so on. As you see here, it actually has a concept of transforms. And what a transform is basically the ability for you to query different types of information. What you're seeing from the screen is basically after you gather information about a target, then you can keep going and find more information about that target, right? This is what they call a graph. So there's a few terminologies in there. An entity is, of course, the entity that you want to actually do the reconnaissance. Second one is the graph that you're seeing in the screen, and I'm just taking advantage of their demo here, right? And it has so many different types of integrations with commercial and open source sources of information. From, you're seeing here, Trend Micro, even Cisco, has some with ThreatGrid before, and let me click on here with all the data sources in here. Intel 471, Scam Advisor, People Data, many, many different ones, including Sentinel from Microsoft, and so on. Again, it's pretty comprehensive, right? So a lot of companies actually use these for their own attack surface management. A lot of professional, ethical hackers, bug bounties, pen testers actually use Maltego a lot. And a lot of law enforcement and private investigators and so on, they actually use Maltego a lot as well. Now there's a community edition, that's a free version that has, a little bit more limited support, but for this purpose, it's actually more than enough. And the challenge is that you do have to register in order to use it, right? So as you're seeing here, you can use a disposable email address if you want to do that, right? But it's an optional exercise in here. I put it as optional. And I have just a few references to the concepts and the definitions in here and so on, and a few, of course, screenshots of how you can use wizards like the company stalker or look information for a specific domain, a specific person, and so on. That if you want to go into more detailed demos, of course, you have the video on demand that I just pasted in the group chat. I mean, there's plenty of them in there that have actually Maltego and some of these tools. The Harvester is exercise 5, even though I didn't tell you to complete exercise 5. Let me actually go over. It's yet another tool. It is very similar to Sublister, but also interacts with other things other than Sublister, right? Than the domain and the search engine, aspect of it. In this case, I'm using it to just use Google, to find information about hacker.org, right? But you can use it for many other, purposes. Well, let me go back to the slides real quick. Bear with me just 1 second. There we go. And what I want to do is kind of set the stage for something that Joseph is going to be covering a lot more tomorrow. And that is around how to use privacy-oriented Linux distributions, right? Parrot and Kali are mostly around, or mostly tailored around ethical hacking and even the kind of purple teaming type scenarios. However, if you want something that is portable, that you can boot through a USB stick, just like you're seeing in the screen here, there are many of them, many Linux distributions that exist out there. The most popular, in my opinion, is Tails. However, if you go to my GitHub repository, and let me go there real quick, and you go under Build Your Own Lab, and you scroll down, I have a lot of information about Black Arch and Parrot and Pen2 and so on. But this section here is around a few links to privacy-oriented distributions. It is a personal preference, right? Several of them, they actually come with different tools or the same. Tails, again, is the one that you have in the slides. Unix is kind of like, all this is free. It's not like a company is competing into each other, but the distributions are competing with each other, right? CubeOS is another one, right? That is becoming really popular, and actually Privacy Remix is down. And then the other one is actually called Subgraph, and then they have other anonymization tools that you can deploy in your own distribution. But if you actually go over popularity, Tails, Unix, and CubeOS are by far the most popular out there. They're all documented. Again, Tails is in your slides, and the other ones are in my GitHub repository. The other thing that I want to go over, since we're talking about anonymity and Tor and so on, is what are onion sites and how can I create one? I do have a demo that if time permits, I'll do later, right? It is not part of your lab guide, right? So I'll try to do it later. If not, we can convene it tomorrow. I'll give you somewhat of an on-demand version of it. But on how you can create your own onion site, right? But in this course, a little bit out of the scope, right? I'm not teaching you how to actually, do these onion sites. But onion sites in the concept of Tor, right, are unindexed sites that can only be accessed to the network, right, or to the Tor network. Give me 1 second here. There we go. So these sites or websites, are accessible through the Tor network, which are the special network designed to provide anonymity and privacy online, the one that I mentioned to you earlier, right? It requires a Tor browser or other specialized software like the Tor service to access, the resources in there, right? So what can you put in an onion site? Well, pretty much anything, right? It is a website, right? So you can have different services, including, but not limited to, things like news outlets, online communities, marketplaces. Often, these are emphasizing privacy and anonymity, but because of the anonymized nature of these onion sites, they also host a range of a lot of illicit, so illegal services and content, highlighting, of course, the dual-edged nature of the technology, right, of the anonymity provided by the Tor network, right? it is very important for users to navigate those onion sites with caution, right? So whenever you're doing this tomorrow, Joseph is going to remind you like 50 times, right, of how to maintain safe whenever you're going to the dark web, right? And you're doing this type of exploration, right? But that's actually what an onion site is there. Now, there are other tools that can be used to scan onion links. One is called Onion Nmap, even a version of Nmap that you can actually run through the Tor network, and Onion Scan as well, right? There are a few tools to crawl the dark web, Lida, Torbot, Torcrawl, and Onion Ingester. All these are linked in my GitHub repository. The direct link is in the bottom of the slides that you have in front of you. Be super careful, as I mentioned to you, right? You're gonna run into pretty much anything. You're gonna run into places that sell drugs, sell stolen credit cards, documents that are being used for human trafficking, gift cards that you can generate and potentially scam different sites, and or that are stolen, counterfeit money. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, there's a lot of other more disturbing content that I'm not even going to mention here, but you can probably imagine right in there. There are tools like Katana that allows you to automate a lot of the surface web, like the Google hacking database and Dorky and everything, but it also supports Tor to do a few scanning of the Tor network. And Joseph is actually going to go over that tomorrow. So I'm going to skip that one. We already went over, Recon-ng and Spiderfoot, so I'm just catching up in here with the slides. But I want to take a moment and define what is Shodan, right? And Shodan, I mentioned it like 50 times, but I never introduced. It is an entity, a company, that is scanning the internet as we speak, 24/7 from multiple locations around the world. And then the results of that scan, they actually put it in a database, and that database can be queried through the web, through a website. If you go to shodan.io, let me actually go there real quick. Always opens in the different monitor. There we go. And then you can query and say, tell me all the devices that are in Telnet that you know, and then that will take a little bit of time. Actually, it should be a lot faster, but I mean, in a crippled internet connection today. But you have 178,000 devices that Shodan actually mentioned in there. They have an API. That's what most of these tools, the automated tools, actually use. Actually, I will not say most. That's what all these tools actually will use, for automating the queries. You can create your own, libraries and tools to query Shodan, or you can use the built-in API client that comes with Kali and Parrot, and the command is just Shodan, just like that. Right? Now, for that, you actually have to register. You don't have to pay. You can click on the pricing here, right? But you can get access to some credits, like one-time fee for specific credits for doing this, right? That's why I am not doing any of the automated, query of Shodan in here, right? I'm not gonna ask you to go pay, some subscription fee or, some a one-time fee for some credits in there. I do have a Shodan account. I do have a paid account, and even my company also has many of them, right? Most enterprises actually are using the services to do attack surface management and for the ethical hackers to use it. Now there's another one called Gray Noise, and it's like this noise. And if I go to graynoise.io, it is basically a competitor to Shodan, but they also provide different type of services, right? but you can also search a query, right? And actually, the cool thing about this one, let me actually go back. Once you query, they have a section about popular queries, IP address, actors, tags. They have a cheat sheet in here, right? IP, CVE, excuse me, metadata information like categories and so on, and how to obtain raw data. I'm trying to get this wider messages in the screen out. I can't. There we go. And it's pretty well documented. I really like that feature. But again, just like you did in Shodan, I type telnet in here, and you see that they have 200,000 results. How many were in Shodan? 178,000. So relatively close. A little bit more in gray noise. And again, take it with a grain of salt, right? Some of these results will absolutely be true positives. That means that they are legitimate websites that are exposed with a specific, vulnerable devices. And again, in my case, I'm just doing telnet, but you can search for industrial control systems, things running protocols like S7, and Modbus and so on that are very unsecure. You can actually find open S3 buckets in Amazon. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? Some of these will be false positive. So in other words, you may be actually getting some results that are because of honeypots. And honeypots is an intentional vulnerable environment that organizations or individuals can actually instantiate to attract network traffic from attackers. And then you actually see what other attackers actually are doing, the tactics and techniques and so on. So some of them will be like that. Some of them will be, malicious sites. You see them in here. And some of them will be, legitimate websites and so on. So that is Shodan and gray noise. And give me 1 second here. There is a question here. Does Shodan has a community free plan? They do have a you saw the pricing structure in there. That they actually have many different ones. For querying online, let me actually go back to Shodan real quick. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is once I click in it, I'm going to log in. Bear with me just 1 second. Multi-factor authentication. There we go. All right. Let me share this in here. Once you log in, you don't have to pay for this. So if you can think about like the community edition to the web, you can click on Explore, right? And then you can have different queries that are specific to environments like industrial control systems, many different databases, network infrastructure, and so on. Let me actually open a couple of them in here, like databases and network infrastructure. So here you see some technologies like, if you want to look at beyond trust integrations or pie holes implementations and find people actually putting Raspberry Pis for blocking applications and as a DNS async calls, and they're probably insecure, and then you can actually hack them. It's kind of like the different purpose. They wanted to actually use it for blocking things, but then attackers actually use it to compromise it and then pivot from there. You can actually do that. Or Citrix Systems, Polycom, Intel, and the list goes on and on. They also have this link to an awesome repository. Awesome is the name of repositories. You saw one earlier about GPTs. This is another one about Shodan queries that has a lot of cool Shodan queries that you can actually implement and look for many different resources, right? And so on. Even looking at, I'm just randomly picking here, like refrigeration units that are actually public on the internet, and many things that should never be exposed to the internet, right? Another example is databases like from MySQL to Mongo, Elasticsearch, and so on, that you may found exposed to the internet out there. So that is Shodan and Gray Noise, right? And of course, they actually have an API. All right, so that was that question. And thank you, MM, for that. I saw that in the Q&A panel. And then I see for student mail ID, they provide 100 queries per month. Yes, for the students, and that's RP. And thank you for that, RP. I really appreciate it. All right, so we already went over Maltego, the concepts of Maltego, the glossary of terms. I have them here. You also have them in your slide, or sorry, in the lab guide. You have a few screenshots in there. We went over that. Oh, a few other things. So finding names and username. There's a pretty cool utility called Web Accounts List Checker, right, that you can actually install. And I have a link in my GitHub repository. In the lab guide, let me go there real quick. There's also an exercise that will take you to different platforms for finding usernames, like name check, Noem, and user search, right? Again, one of them is called What's My Name, and you can just clone that repository, cd to the directory, install the requirements, very similar to what you did before with other tools, and then you use Python, or you can change mod to look for Python in your environment, and then web accounts list checker.py, put a username, and it will look for that username in many different elements and see if they are legitimate for things like Twitter or Cloudflare, or you see them in there. And as a matter of fact, it's open source. You can modify those in there. Now, targeting nerds like us, right, that we actually take advantage of public APIs like GitHub APIs and everything, you can find tons of usernames that are being repeated. I'm the big offender of that. Santos Omar in Twitter, Santos Omar in GitHub, Santos Omar in LinkedIn is the same, right? It's a security mispractice, or malpractice, if you will. I shouldn't say malpractice. That's a legal bad thing, right? But don't follow my example. All my information is public nowadays. I use it for my own books and everything to teach other people. But for very sensitive information, things that are not, public like that, of course, I don't even use usernames that are attributable to a name. I use mostly numbers with, alphanumeric usernames, like 53 underscore cable 12345, right? Something like that. And I mentioned the word cable because I'm actually looking at my cables in my computer right now. No, that is one of my usernames. But this is another example of how you can obtain information about a specific user in GitHub, right? Another thing that I really like to use as an example of bad behaviors of people, and believe me, I'm telling that to my wife because she's like the first offender in there, and she's not near me right now. But that's why the reason that I can mention that. A lot of people expose too many things on the internet, right? Even whenever you're paying for somebody's, I don't know, donating money or some, shirt. In this case, you see here, this lady, I blocked her name, but publicly says, hey, this is for a sweatshirt. And she paid that person. And then before that, she paid somebody else. And then before that, she paid, other Aspen School, whatever that is, right? Back in 2021. Now I can see the different habits and the different entities that I can use that as a scam. Very targeted email. And this, for sure, people will click on it. Say, hey, again, I don't remember the name of the person I blocked it here, but it's Li. But I just said, Linda, hey, Linda or Lindsay, you purchased this thing, this sweatshirt. And unfortunately, the transaction was incorrect. Can you please try again, send you a link that is built in. The person clicks on it, probably steal their cookies, they steal their money, whatever the case might be, right? So all that actually is public information that you can gather through OSINT. Then exercise 7 is going to walk you through finding emails and breach information. There is a tool. It's really cool. It's called Infoga. And it's a Python tool, just like the other ones. You can actually clone it, set up, do a setup install, and then after that you use Python to invoke it. And then you have many different options to query, whether it's a domain or a username or an email and so on, and perform many different open source intelligence queries using breach information. So information that was part of a breach, right? So that, which is actually very powerful in there. All right, so there are all the ones like hate mail is another one that, so it's H8 mail, and all of those are in my GitHub repository. As a matter of fact, let me actually go there real quick. You can see, even though I walked you through it earlier, but if you go under OSINT, there's a section for breach query tools. There we go. And hate mail is one of them that you can actually see your passwords that are being part of different breaches, right? If whenever LinkedIn is breached, whenever, nothing is immune. Pretty much everything somehow is going to be, breached or hacked. So that's the importance of using multi-factor authentication, not reusing passwords. You know the deal, right? You don't need me for that. That's something that we teach you, like security 101. But there's many other tools in here that you can actually use, like Base Query Buster, PwnDB, Scavenger, WhatBreach. WhatBreach is also a pretty popular tool as well. Actually, all of them that I have here are. That's the reason I have them there. All right. So what I'm going to do, going back to your lab guide, I'm going to give you another break. It's going to be a shorter break, even though I kind of went through these exercises. They're mostly reference. You can do them after the class, but I'm going to be respectful and give you some time to complete those, or catch up. And in this 10-minute break, you're going to complete all exercises all the way up to exercise 8 in Mmap. And there, I'm going to actually go over a few things that you can actually complete for active reconnaissance. So we're going to shift gears into active reconnaissance. So this will be the last break to catch up all the way to exercise 8. So you will see the timer in the next few seconds here in the screen. And once we come back again, we shift gears into active reconnaissance. Thank you, have fun, and I'll talk to you then. All right, the break timer is over. So let's share the screen here again. And we're gonna go and start covering active reconnaissance. So we were covering, a lot of the things that you can do passively using open source intelligence. So let's actually start going over active reconnaissance. The first thing that we're gonna start is with the basics of port and vulnerability scanning. And if you're not familiar with the scanner, the easiest way to get familiarized with it is by using a very popular scanner called Nmap. And even before I go here and explain Nmap, let me paste a link to your group chat in here. So that link is hackingscenarios.com. If you click on that link, it will take you to this website. And basically, this is a glorified bookmark, if you will, of many different exercises and labs that you can complete here in O'Reilly, free with your subscription, without the need of installing anything in your system. Like, for example, if I want to go into the introduction to network and port scanning using Nmap, I can click on that one. It will take you to this page. Once you click on start, it will have an interactive shell that is basically just a Linux system here running Ubuntu, as you can see. And then you can walk through all the exercises, all the introduction of what is Nmap, how to install it. You see that it's actually installed in here, and you can just basically click through the commands and it will actually type it for you. You don't have to actually even type, some of these commands in there. You see the version information of Nmap, and then you can do the help page. You keep going, and it will walk you through step by step on these set of information. That now the same Gravemind Docker container that you have in Websploit, it's also here in O'Reilly, right? So I created actually with my son, with Derek, and Gravemind is a theme, it's themed after Halo. We're all Halo fanboys in my house, and you have different exercises you can actually complete and do examples of the reconnaissance aspects of scanning against a specific application. The other thing is that you can also access my cheat sheet of Nmap by using this curl command in the screen, right? So it's going to hacker.org's cheat Nmap, and from any system. It doesn't have to be this. It can be from Websploit, it can be from your Windows system, from Mac and everything. You can actually go there and get this Nmap cheat sheet that, again, we actually created for these exercises. And it will go over the basic Nmap syntax, the status of the ports, the scan types, the probing options, and so on. These can also be accessed through my GitHub repository. And as a matter of fact, even here in O'Reilly, in the lab, it has a link to the GitHub repository. And under cheat sheets, I have plenty of cheat sheets in here, even for AI, prompt engineering, etc. But there's one here for Nmap that is basically the same as what you saw in the CLI here that I showed you a few seconds ago, right? So all that is there for your reference. You can see that it's actually running the containers, in Gravemind containers in there. As a matter of fact, I combined them into one. They have two that Derek actually created. And then you start going over all the different elements of doing a full TCP scan, an ACK scan. You can scan it against one of the containers. In this case, it's running on 10.0.0.5. We make this a little bit bigger so you can see better. And you'll see the ports that are open and so on. So again, you don't even have to install anything in your machine to complete these exercises, right? They're all step-by-step in here. It actually provides the explanation of the output whether you want to do a SYNT scan. As you progress, again, it's pretty lengthy. As you progress, you also have information about UDP scanning, which is actually less reliable than TCP scans, of course, because of the nature of the UDP protocol, but it walks you through doing that. And then host discovery, basically like a ping sweep. It actually goes beyond ping sweep and so on. And it goes over the mmap scripting engine. And basically, the mmap scripting engine will allow you to create scripts or use some that are built in that will automate the base functions of mmap and execute, in parallel, making the process a little bit more efficient for you to do reconnaissance and for you to do enumeration, right? So there's a command or option called SC, or the option SC, that can be used to invoke the most common mmap engine or scripted engine scripts that are pertinent to a specific port. So for example, if I'm actually coming here and I'm executing the command, mmap SC to the 10.00/24 network, it's going to enumerate all the containers. The example should look something like that. It will run in a second. It will take a lot more time because it's scanning the whole network. And you will get a whole bunch of output depending on the port. Then it goes over and pick the most popular mmap scripted engine script to actually run. Right? As a matter of fact, let me actually do it against one of the containers. It will be faster instead of the whole network. And I'm gonna let it run there for a second. Again, the output will look similar to this one right here. So 10.0.0.5. And you see that for SSH, you get the keys. DNS is running bind. There's a super secret application platform in there, as a banner. That's actually the concept of banner grabbing. And the other one, actually has bind as well, and some other platform in there, right? Some other website. So the other thing that you can go over is an advanced. Oops, I actually just closed the lab. But an advanced scanning exercise. And again, I'll paste direct links to the chat in here for your reference. There we go. And I just saw the I pasted that one. Yes, and as a matter of fact, at the end, just change the 1 and the 2 for the 3, and then the 4. But there are more than that. Let me go back to that page, the hacking scenarios. Oops. Close. Here, so we went over the introduction to network scanning, advanced port scanning. There's also a web application vulnerability scanner called Nikto, right? That's the third one in that list. Then you can do scanning for containers using Gripe and Trivi. They're open source tools. This will take you a little bit more time. And then different exercises to do enumeration and scanning and reconnaissance of web applications using tools like FOF, GoBuster, FerexBuster, and so on. So if I go back to the lab guide, exercise 8 will walk you through mmap. Again, you can use exercise 8 just with Websploit, or complete the 2 exercises that I went through super fast, right? But at least go through those with time. Each of those exercises, the one that I just literally glanced through it, they're supposed to take anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes, right? But again, I did it pretty fast. I am going to give you a lab break to complete some of these. Many of them are going to be for homework. We're not going to have enough time in here to actually go into every exercise, but I'm giving you as much information and homework and references as possible here, so you can get, armed to do this, over the weekend or over the next, few weekends, because it's going to take you a little bit more time, right? For exercise 8 is mmap. And you see here also the command that I mentioned to you earlier in Websploit called containers. There's also containers.sh. It should be in your path, but if it's not, you can search for containers.sh. And it will tell you the containers that are running and the containers that are supposed to be running, right? So everything should be supposed to be running there. Then exercise 9 goes over directory enumeration using GoBuster. For the mmap, as a matter of fact, the first three links that we have in the group chat. So pasted the first one, then I pasted the second one, and the third one there, and then I have a fourth one that I just changed the name. But for the 2 mmap exercises and the one that is in your lab guide, I am going to give you 10 minutes, only 10 minutes. Even though yes, it will take you. Actually, I'll be fair, just for everybody to catch up. I'll give you 15 minutes, and that should be plenty of time to do catching up and so on. Hopefully, as I'm talking, you're doing some of these exercises, you're glancing through it. But I'll give you that. You see the timer now in front of your screen. Please also plan your breaks. Feel free to take a bio break right now. We will not take separate breaks, as I mentioned to you, and complete that exercise, or those exercises rather. And once we come back, we're gonna go over directory enumeration, file enumeration in web applications, and so on. So I'll talk to them. Have fun. Right, the timer is over. Let's actually share the screen real quick. And to recap, we gave you some time for completing all the way to the exercises around web application reconnaissance. But again, we went super fast on Nmap, but hopefully, you were able to actually the explanations in the introduction to network scanning and advanced port scanning, your own Python scripts to actually do this type of reconnaissance, or you can actually ChatGPT nowadays, use GitHub Copilot. But I also have a lot of different references in my GitHub repository. You also went over very briefly an application security scanner called Nikto, and I'm going to take advantage of this time to actually go over that, and also go over demo on GoBuster. To Nikto, yeah, perfect. So again, you can complete this without installing anything in your system. It's going to take a little bit of time whenever this thing actually comes up in my screen. But Nikto is very popular web application scanner. There's many of them out there, many of them out there. And but it's one of the most popular, very lightweight. It actually comes installed by default in Kali and Parrot Security. However, you can actually really easily install it with sudo apt update, just like you see in the lab guide here, or in the lab exercise, right? And then you can install it like that. I don't know why my terminal is not, it's not working here. Probably. Yep. I see a dot, but I don't see anything. Maybe gonna have to refresh the screen in there. It's where you have Nikto on one side, and then an application on another side that is running on 10.0.05, which is basically the same application that we were using before, with the container in the Nmap scanning section. And then in this case, we actually go over, the output. Let me actually make this a little bit bigger, if I can. Doesn't look like it can. Let me refresh it. Enumerate directories and files and folders in a web application. And in this case, the exercise 9 walks you through how to use this tool in Websploit. However, you can also use this tool for other things, be able to scan or find open Amazon S3 buckets to look for specific virtual host names on target web servers and so on, right? But in this case, we're actually going to be using it for listing and finding assets and directories and files in a web application. Right? Nikto can also allow you to do that. And as a matter of fact, in the lab guide or in the lab exercise that you have in the group chat, it actually walks you on how to actually do this against that web application, and then find different directories. So if you look at GoBuster, it's a little bit different than Nikto because it has the capability for you to use a specific word list. And even though Nikto can also do the same thing, but in this case, you do have to specify word list with GoBuster to then do any of these operations, specifically doing directory enumeration. So for the demo or the example that I have in your lab guide, you're using GoBuster. Just give me 1 second. A little bit better here. So using GoBuster, make this a little bit bigger so you can see it better. You specify in dir, and annotations are horrible here. There you go, dir for directory, -w for specifying a word list, and this long thing here, of course, is your word. Slower. It's actually not a little bit, it's a lot slower.
Hey, Omar, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Your audio is breaking up quite bad. I'm not sure if maybe you want to refresh and reconnect.
Let me refresh. Is it better now? It's probably not better. So let me see. Hopefully, work better with the.
All right, looks like Omar is currently reconnecting. We'll just give him a sec. Sorry about that, everyone.
All right, testing 1, 2, 3. Let me see if this is better.
All right, Omar, I can hear you. Maybe start the screen share, and we'll see if it remains like that.
And the screen share should be going right now.
Yep. Okay. I can see the screen share.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So again, GoBuster actually allows you to use word list, and you already know what a word list is. You've done the other exercises before. In this case, I'm using the one from Dirtbuster. You can use many of them out there, and I have plenty of them in Websploit. After that, you actually specify the target by specifying the -u for the URL, and then, of course, followed by the URL itself. In this case, it's 127.0.0.1, port 8889. For your exercises in Websploit, you can select any of the containers that are running in Websploit. There we go. So if you go on root, we'll have tons of word lists for discovery, fuzzing, password, cracking, etc. Right? So that's exercise 9. Exercise 10 is using yet another tool called FUF. It is a very fast tool, super fast. It's also written in Go, just like GoBuster. That's why the name of GoBuster, right? It's kind of the replacement for Dirtbuster in Go, back in the day. And then now there are plenty of other alternatives. So you may ask also, which one do you recommend? Well, I use all 3 of them. I use FUF, I use Fox, Feroxbuster, and GoBuster. And the reason for that is because in some cases, I want to use FUF to then interact with Burp Suite and then send the information from the enumeration very, very, very popular web application proxy, even though this is not a pen testing class for web applications, but most people that actually continue after this class, especially those of you that might be interested in going on bug bounties, they specialize sometimes in web applications, and it's because web applications are everywhere. And whether you're testing an application like on 24 right now, or an API, Burp Suite is by far one of the most popular tools to send the output, right? In this case, I'm showing you in the screen right now, you see that demo using Websploit, right? But let me go back to the screen here. And if you see, the syntax very similar to GoBuster. So FOF-W, a word list. I'm using exactly the same word listing here. -U for the URI of the web application that you want to fuzz. However, what is different here is that if you see, there's a keyword called fuzz. So you will put the fuzz keyword wherever you want to actually fuzz and do the enumeration within your environment or within the web application, right? So if you have, like, I don't know, an admin directory, you can do /admin/fof, and then it will fuzz all the different files and directories, or we'll try to enumerate all the files and directories within the explanatory. And then -C is for color output and V for verbose. You don't need me for that. You have it documented there. You can save it to a file as a JSON file. I'm running, in this example, I was running Burp Suite locally, of course, in the same machine, on Websploit. By default, Websploit, sorry, not Websploit. By default, Burp Suite will will do the proxy operations on port 8080 by default. You can change that in Burp Suite, but in this case, I'm leaving it as a default, and I'm replaying all the output and redirecting that to all the that are actually finds, so FOF finds, and then sends it to Burp Suite. So why is that relevant? Or
Hey, Omar, I think we lost you again. Maybe you want to close out and reconnect.
is free, and it does not support till. Can you hear me?
Sort of. You were cut out for a little bit of time there.
Okay. Let me. Okay, let me know if you can hear me better now. I just refresh again.
I can hear you. Yeah, it seems like it would be stable for like a minute or so, and then it would start cutting out a bit.
Oh, wow. Unfortunately, there's not much that I can do from my side on that. However, let me try the screen sharing one more time and at least explain that last option, and then I'll give you guys a break to complete the following exercises. I'll give you some homework while we actually break and then come back. But what I was going over is that Burp Suite comes in two flavors, right? The professional edition, you can pay for it, and then the free version, which is the community edition that we have available in Websploit and Kali, Linux, Parrot, etc. Then Give me 1 second. So I just saw a message from Joseph. The browser is not the problem; it's the Wi-Fi here in the hotel. So in other words, you can actually absolutely use POF to kind of bypass that restriction of automated scanning that you have with professional version, right? So that's what I'm showing you how to do in this other section of the exercise, right? Now, there is another tool by the Open Worldwide Application Security Project, otherwise known as OWASP. It's called ZAP, the Z-Attack Proxy. And that's exercise 11. And in that case, actually, that supports, it's a free tool. It supports automated scanning. It also can be used for being integrated to automation within your CI/CD pipelines, and you can do automated scanning as you're actually creating code. Super powerful as well, even though it is free. And I have a section here that goes over even examples of how using Python with ZAP v2, the module, and interacting with the scanner. This is actually, again, this is an optional exercise. You don't have to actually do that one. It will take you a little bit of time, but you can follow, my sample code in there, and also that's in the GitHub repository for you. Exercise 12 is about enumerating users in Linux. Very self-explanatory, using a few Linux commands like awk, set, and so on. And then if I keep going, I have a few additional tips for account discoveries, both in Linux, in Windows, and also in the cloud, like for cloud accounts and so on. So I have a lot of different things in there for you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the last 15 minutes. And this is for you to complete all the different exercises. Once we come back, that will put us in the bottom of the hour. And then what I'll do is I'll give you guys a time for doing a Q&A. And I'll come back, do a Q&A, and we can wrap up early today, probably 20 minutes early and so. So let me actually push the 15-minute timer. Hopefully by that time my internet connectivity behaves better. And then we'll do the Q&A. So please complete all the different exercises you have there. Again, 15 minutes may not be enough time, but it will at least get you started. At least I went over all of them that you have in the lab guide. So thank you again, and I'll talk to you in 15 minutes. right, the break timer is over. And as I mentioned to you, basically what I would like to do, I'll share my screen real quick for a few resources, but I want to dedicate some time for Q&A, for the last minute Q&A, and then give you some logistical information for tomorrow. So there was a question you probably already saw in the group chat by AA asking if this class was designed to equip you to do all bug hunting. And this class is specifically around reconnaissance. As a matter of fact, let me give you somewhat of a history about this class. We started actually the scope of the class to only be the dark web reconnaissance, right? Which is what Joseph is covering tomorrow. However, based on a lot of popular demand, a lot of people actually were asking about, hey, how can I do this for like bug bounties and so on? So we kind of model the first day to do reconnaissance in what we call the surface web, right? So the normal reconnaissance, from the eyes of a bug bounty hunter or an ethical hacker, etc. And then tomorrow, more around dark web, right? Now, I know that a lot of you may actually be looking to start, playing with bug bounties and so on. If you're not familiar with that, in my GitHub repository, which I'm sharing here, there's a section called bug bounties, and there's a few tips in here. One of them is from a friend of ours. He goes by Nahamsek, but his name is Ben, and he has a lot of resources for beginners that are getting started for bug bounties. However, there are a lot of additional references in here. Like one is called The Life of a Bug Hunter, and awesome bug bounty cheat sheets. And if you click on that, that will take you to this repository, and it's extremely comprehensive, right? So some around process scripting, server-side request forging, reconnaissance, practice platforms that you can do, XML external entity, remote code execution, the list goes on and on, right? So if you click on any of these, it will redirect you to different examples and cheat sheets, basically, related to things that you can do against a public web application and so on that are related to bug bounty. At the end of the day, bug bounties are very, broad. How you get started with bug bounties is really simple, right? Basically, you don't have to get hired by nobody. You can participate in public bug bounties. And let me actually take a step back and define what are public and private bug bounties. So a public bug bounty is basically a bug bounty that anybody can participate on, right? There are, again, public, just like the word says. A private bug bounty, that's whenever researchers are getting invited to the specific programs. For example, at Cisco, I personally own the bug bounty policy at Cisco. As a matter of fact, I have to renew it, in the next couple of weeks, and so on. And we have private and public bug bounties, and the majority of them are private, on where they are actually getting invited. But we also have several public bug bounties. One for Canada Security, another one for Meraki, and now that we actually acquired Splunk, they actually have a bug bounty as well. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? Then AppDynamics, for example, has a private bug bounty. CX Cloud has a private bug bounty. We also have a VDP with BugCrowd, and so on. And talking about BugCrowd, you keep going in that GitHub repository. You have a bug bounty platforms and a whole bunch of companies that basically can help organizations manage this bug bounty. They call them bug bounty platforms, but are companies, right? I'll give you a perfect example. Like if I go to BugCrowd right now and I have it like bookmarking here, there's a program called Secure the Government. And yes, you can, if you want, try to hack the Department of Homeland Security and report a vulnerability, and you can actually get paid and so on. This one is actually more of a VDP, but they actually have a whole bunch of vulnerability management and bug bounty programs that are related to government institutions around the world. I just went to the one in the US, of course. But the Department of Homeland Security pays Bugcrowd to then host, this VDP program or the bug bounty in this case. And then you see that there's always a scope of what you're allowed to target or not allowed to target. And as a matter of fact, in the scope of the VDP for DHS is pretty comprehensive. You see a lot of wildcards to many different websites, including stopransomware.gov and secretservice.gov and schoolsafety.gov and USSS.gov, and you keep going, right? They have different guidelines on how you can participate, and this one is more of a BDP rather than a traditional bug bounty, but you get the point, right? So a lot of people actually participate in bug bounties to get a little bit of experience, put them in their resume, and potentially get a job, right? So again, tons of other resources in my GitHub repository, including a link to this other repository called Awesome Bug Bounty Write-Ups. And these are very comprehensive write-ups of, or a very comprehensive list of write-ups of real-world bug bounties and vulnerabilities that people actually have found that have been allowed to do the walkthrough. And these are against against companies like Google or NVIDIA or you saw their DHS and so on. So if you keep going, this is just a section for cross-site scripting, and you see how many there are in here. I mean, there's hundreds of these write-ups, and a lot of people, reviews of walkthroughs of capture the flag events, and again, the mini competitions that you can do within a conference or within, different educational, environments. Those are kind of fictitious. In this case, these walkthroughs are real life, right? I mean, these are the vulnerabilities that people actually have found in those bug bounties. So it actually gives you a really good, again, these are community driven, right? Some of them are going to be super amazing, very, very detailed. The other ones, maybe a couple of paragraphs, right? So, but they are by far a really good resource for you to get started. All right, so I see a couple of, actually it was a only comment, and thanks, Omar, very useful. And I do not see any pending questions, both in the Q&A or in the group chat. Well, with that said, thank you so much for your time today. We're gonna adjourn a little bit early in here. Tomorrow, as we mentioned, Joseph is gonna deep dive into the dark web and reconnaissance in the dark web, how to stay safe in everything there. You can reuse a Websploit or use any other Linux distribution. Joseph is actually gonna go over that tomorrow, and you're gonna get a different lab guide. You're gonna, come back for another, comprehensive lab guide for many different exercises for you tomorrow. But thank you again from the bottom of my heart. Sorry for the audio problems a few minutes ago, and I pass it back to Derek.
All right, thank you so much, Omar, and thanks everyone for attending. We hope to see you back tomorrow for day 2. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up the session a little bit early. Take care, enjoy the rest of your day or night, and we'll see you back tomorrow.